Okay, it's time for our Big Ideas in Digital panel. And I'm going to have the panelists introduce themselves in just a minute. But the idea is that we picked 4 digital leaders, and we want to have them talk a little bit about kind of the experiences that they're having in their digital transformation. Now, I've done this panel many times, and it tends to be no pressure panel, but it tends to be one of the highest rated sessions because I think people love hearing from their peers. So let's start off. If you would, tell us who you are and what you do.
Sure. I'm Jim Tennyson. I'm the Chief Information Officer and Chief Digital Officer for the Voice of America. Voice of America is the U.S.'s largest international broadcaster. We have a weekly audience of over 275 million. We broadcast in over 47 languages in over 100 countries. And I'm in charge of their global products as well as their technology.
Thanks.
Hi, good morning. I'm Jatin Atre. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of CentralSquare. CentralSquare is one of the largest government technology providers. We basically provide everything behind when people have to call 911, right from receiving the call all the way to dispatching first responders. We also provide everything to manage cities, and we have about 7,650 clients all through North America.
Good morning, I'm Nikhil Deshpande. I'm the Chief Digital Officer with the state of Georgia. It's a state right about 11 million people and a lot of digital interactions every day. So my Office of Digital Services makes sure that we provide citizen-centric services to all of our constituents and citizens. And we have been doing that on the web tier where we have about 75% of our interactions happening for the last 10 years on the Acquia platform.
My name's Jacob Redding. I am an open source program lead at Accenture and help lead our global Drupal practice within Accenture Interactive, which is an experience agency built within Accenture.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you. Thanks for joining us. I'm not going to ask every panelist every question, so we didn't do a ton of prep around this. So let's start out first of all. If you think about it, we want to know what's keeping you up at night. So what are the things that you go to bed worried about and when it comes to your digital transformation? So we're going to start. Jacob, why don't you start?
Okay, so what keeps me up at night?
Yeah.
Robot dogs. I don't know if you've seen the Boston Dynamics videos, but those keep me up at night.
Black Mirror.
Yes. But I would say what keeps us on the edge of our seat in terms of what are we thinking of next, I think it's the customer expectations. So I specifically think of like TikTok and this on-demand generation of what customers really want and what the future of customers are going to want. And what's interesting is, what they want is less, right? They don't want more engagement, they want more touch points. We're building those things, but they want less time. And so how do we deliver the same experience and the same expectation with less time? And I think that's a hard thing to get right. Because if you look at TikTok, it's 7-second videos, and that's what they care about.
Right. I think everyone faces that. That's right. Nikhil?
Yeah, no, it's my, I would say, nightmare is quite similar. The
robot dogs or the TikTok?
That too. There are several polls that actually show that public trust in government is at its lowest point. And that has nothing to do with politics. It's just about service delivery. Because we are so used to dealing with the Apples and the Amazons that our expectations as consumers are high. And if the trust is low in government, like we find ourselves at a pretty tough spot. Like how do we deliver that? And trying to kind of bridge that gap is where I think we struggle a lot. And that's really where I guess our mission is as well. Trying to kind of bridge that gap and trying to deliver as best services as we can. And if TikTok gets 7 seconds, good God, I mean, how many seconds are they going to give the government? So we get them in and out as soon as possible.
Great.
Thank you, Nikhil. Our concerns as marketers to the public sector are similar, but even in the private sector are similar to this, where we're right now competing for every moment with everybody, right? So we are competing for the same moment that the mayor has when she's looking at her phone with CNN, with CNBC, with ESPN. So there is no like B2B or business to government left anymore, right? As far as content delivery goes, as far as marketing goes, you're absolutely in the same open season that we have for everybody else. And so we need to really think through it as who our competitors are, because many a times marketers say, oh, my competitor is X company. Well, as far as content delivery goes and as far as marketing goes, no, your competition is Netflix, it is CNN, it's all of them, because you're competing for time. And that's the big thing. How do you create appealing marketing content when the world's largest content creators are competing with you?
Mm-hmm. Jim?
Luckily me, I don't have any concerns, so that works out well.
Everything's going so well?
Everything's running smooth.
Okay, there's one.
Well, for us, we our strategy, we're focusing on both the internal and the external customers. Our internal customers would be our thousands of journalists around the globe that are producing the media and the news for our audience, being our external customers, being the global audience. One of the major concerns for us would be going offline. We provide it via television, radio, and digital means, and a lot of the areas that we focus on are their free press and free speech is not it's just not there. So we worry about hackers, and not just normal hackers, but nation-state hackers as well that could take us offline or alter our message or our content as it goes out.
Wow. Thank you. Nikhil, so yesterday in my session, I was talking about revealing some customer survey results that we had from consumers and marketers about how marketers are doing in terms of their digital experience and whether or not they're making a great customer experience. And so one of the things I talked about a little bit was the idea that, and what came through in the survey, is that people are really interested in voice. And people are now much more willing to integrate and communicate with their brands via voice. And I know you guys are doing some amazing things around voice. Would you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. We took a landscape review of how people interact with us. And based on that, we saw there were certain demographics that just nothing that can convince them to use a digital channel. So they will look at a person and get their answer, which is fine. But there are certain people who prefer to use voice. There were certain people who would prefer to use a bot. So based on that, we decided that we need to build this platform that contextualizes our content so well that it can be fluidly delivered across different channels. And our pilot for that was Ask Georgia Gov, which was a Alexa skill that we built. And we connected that to Drupal. And with partnership with Acquia, actually, we were able to kind of give every possible answer for certain questions without getting into any personal information. What happened was it actually made our content so consumable across different services, even the Googles and other search engines, even at the voice level, started picking up our content, which was not part of our actual skill. So it had pretty wide side effects of just making your content better as part of just that one voice skill.
Right. And you're pleased with it?
Yes, we actually plan on expanding it even more with digital assistants and different channels where people really don't have to pick up the phone and wait in line to speak to someone or physically go somewhere.
Right. And are you willing, if anyone has questions about this, are you willing to talk with them after about it?
Sure.
Okay,
Yep.
that would be great. Jim? One of the other things we talked about yesterday, still here, that's good.
Okay.
One of the other things we talked about yesterday in the survey results was that big disconnect between, 90% of consumers think that brands aren't making a great customer experience for them.
Right.
So, and as marketers, we really struggle with that. So why do you think it's so hard? What's the nugget that we're missing about making a great customer experience?
Well, I think it's as simple as connecting with the customer, getting out there and, not just doing focus groups, but you need to design your products and your tools for those that will be using them and those that are engaging with them. You can see this throughout history, and going back to, I think, 2005, when Dell launched IdeaStorm and connecting with their audience in order to help grow their product and their product base and connect more with their customers. They launched a site where they brought in people to allow the first users of their products to engage and create their products for them. So I think that comes down to, I know we focus on that primarily as well in the development of our products for internal use with our journalists. We have them work side by side with the development teams in order to get the tools that they need, but as well as our products that we send out on a global basis.
Okay, cool. Jacob?
So it's actually something we think quite a lot about. And about 2 years ago, we released a product called the Customer Experience Engine, which is a pretty basic acronym, but it's the underlying tools behind it are some really fundamental architectures that solve one very simple problem. And so the architecture, what it does is it focuses on the experience of the customer, and they find, or we found that one of the things that has caused that experience to drop down is that it's an inconsistent experience across channels. Data is missing or is dropped or is moved around from one place to the next. And customers used to give forgiveness if they were on the phone or on the website and had different information. I think that forgiveness is gone. You know, so if they're on the website or on a web channel or a digital channel or a chatbot or a customer agent or a third-party vendor, the customer wants everything about them to be known to every person as if it's the same person. So the customer experience engine is about one customer, one company, no different channels. And how do you orchestrate all of that data? And more importantly, how do you fill in gaps in data when we all know we're going to have systems that this one has 20% of the data, that has 80% of the data, and that those two together make 100%. So I think that's the number one failing of why people say, I have no faith that customers do this, because the channels are just different, and customers don't care about channels.
Interesting. Okay. Jitin, personalization. We talked a lot about it yesterday. We're all talking about it. I think it was a part of everyone's presentation. You guys are doing some pretty interesting things around personalization. Can you talk to us about it?
Sure. So, as I said earlier in my comments, that you really need to compete with all content out there. So how do you compete? So one of the best ways to compete is to make sure that you're creating snackable content, but the snacks are useful for the person who's visiting that particular website at that time. So we sell a lot to government agencies, and one of the beautiful things is that we can actually figure out where a visitor is coming from, like most of you can, but we can actually action it. So now when you visit our website from Cleveland, we can talk about crime in Cleveland because we sell it to a lot of police chiefs. When you visit our website from Miami Beach, we can talk about protecting tourists. And we have seen that being able to do this personalization at scale, naturally it's hard because you have to first figure out there's a human component of what content needs to be served to who. But once you do it at scale, our bounce rate using Acquia is down about 70%. So it was very high, as you can imagine, and now it's substantially down for all personalized content. It's a little spooky when you visit the website and you go like, wow, how do they know I'm in New Orleans? But then immediately the rest of it is catered to you, so you tend to engage quickly but smartly on it.
Cool, thank you. Anyone else want to talk about personalization?
I can touch upon like the other aspect of it, which is we as a government body have to be very careful about that because the key is to build that trust or to have that trust. And all of us are alarmed when a government body tends to know something about us that we had not shared, and very well could have been something that's shared. So I think at the web level, creating that personalization piece of it is key for experience, but we have to truly walk into it in a very aware state. But the overall consumption and the appetite for people to be known has changed. In the past, we got absolute resistance, even us as consumers, when our browser asked, do you want to disclose where you are? We're like, absolutely not. But if that blue dot on Uber goes somewhere else, we freak out because we want them to know where we are. So it's really going to boil down to trust of like who we trust our information with, and if it's done the right way, I think it's really key.
Okay. Jacob, did you want to answer? You're looking like you do.
I can talk about anything. So, I think a lot of the stuff that we talked about, that's already been talked about, we echo a lot of that, particularly around the customer experience sort of side of things. But where we get the data, I think, is a very key point. Customers are now you can see this with this sort of the Facebook versus Apple sort of personalization war that's happening right now. Apple's very much like, we're the privacy company. We take your data very, we hold it in high regard. And we're starting to see that across. Where are you getting the data? Are you buying the data? How can you use that data? And we have to be very careful as we craft experiences to not go into the side of like creepy, but to use their data respectfully and to only take what we need and what will create a better experience. So I think with personalization, we're in a bit of a flux within the industry. Things are changing rapidly.
Okay. Nikhil, back to you. How important is open source? When you're looking at technology and thinking about technology, is it a nice to have? Is it a requirement? Talk to us about that.
Spent a good bit of my last, I would say, 5 or 6 years talking about open source and trying to convince leaders within our organizations about open source. I think it's really key. It's a different concept, it's a different paradigm, and for a lot of people in larger organizations where a lot of the leadership is driven by risk management, the concept of open source being risky, which is not really true entirely. I mean, you fall asleep at the wheel, anything is risky. So I think open source is key because it just democratizes what we are trying to do. It opens up our service intents, and it also opens up, as you saw earlier where Dries was talking, a collaboration of everyone chiming in to make your experience better. And when we hopped on the open source wagon about 10 years ago, Georgia was the very first state to actually implement open source at an enterprise scale. And having done that, we slowly were able to show value in not just the cost savings of open source, but also the value add in having something that we can control. And based on our citizen feedback, we can change things, we can implement things, and we can dictate the roadmap of the product and experiences that we can roll out. We are now at a point where we are working hard on creating an open source policy within the state, and we are hoping to kind of see some other open source implementations other than the web.
Mm-hmm. You folks are pioneers. I know a lot of other government organizations look to you, so congratulations on that, by the way, because well done. Jim.
Yes.
Glad you're still here.
Still here.
Okay. Okay, so what other technologies are you looking at, thinking about? We talked a little bit about voice. We talked about personalization. What else is on your horizon? What else are you thinking about?
AI. Spooky, right? No, but we're, over this past year, we've been spending a lot of time in the emerging technology realm, or we'd like to think that we're playing in the emerging technology realm, focusing on use of machine learning, as well as virtual reality, augmented reality, and voice. With the machine learning, we were using Drupal, actually, we were able to come up with a minimal viable product within 3 months of a transcription translation engine that we used internally, or tool that we used internally, we call Ipsum. And we were able to build that rapidly and get it deployed out for the journalists, because as for our organization, we have 47 different newsrooms within 47 different languages, and they're all creating news for their different regions within the globe. But some things need to be shared across all 47, or some things could be more interesting or be more pertinent to different regions within the world. So we developed this tool to aid them in the transcription as well as the translation of the content that they're sharing. So and we ended up gaining a 10 times savings based on the time it takes for a transcriber or translator to work on a 30-minute program. It took them about 90 minutes. And then by using this tool, it took it down to about 9 minutes. And that was included the transcription and translation rapidly. However, allowing for the QC, because we're not going to allow anything to go out without having the human interface or having them do the quality check on it, it took it down to about 9 minutes.
Wow.
Yes. And then for voice, we created 12 24-hour Alexa streams, and for news to release the news. And for virtual reality, we've been pushing our journalists to go out and start doing a lot of filming over the past year with their 360 cameras, because we want to do a major launch into Oculus and other VR headsets here soon.
And again, if anyone has questions about it, are you around later that people can ask you?
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe.
Excellent. Easy questions. How about that? Okay, thank you. Jatin, want to talk at all about any other technology that you folks are looking at or thinking about?
Sure. I feel as marketers, one of the most exciting technologies is going to be AR, right? There's lots of media coverage now, whether it is Amazon or Microsoft with HoloLens and all these. So there are a lot of big boys who are going to be developing hardware, and that receives a lot of press, but at the end of the day, it's not about developing the DVD player, it's actually creating the movies that play on the DVD. And I do feel in public safety, as an example, for an officer to be able to quickly get information through an AR-based screen will change the way officers interact with communities. And on the public admin side, if you think of it, there's no reason why somebody shouldn't be able to, a city engineer shouldn't be able to look at a road and be able to say, that's where the water main is breaking, use some level of just basic machine learning to be able to say, how do I need to budget for this? Just walking through a city. And I don't believe that's too much in the future. I do believe that it's within people in this room's purview to invent it in the next 10 years.
Cool. Okay, I like to end on a fun question, usually. So you ready? Ready for the fun question?
See what we got.
Yeah, okay. So let's suppose you have in front of you a time machine. There's a little time machine that's in front of you, and you can turn that and turn the dial back on the time machine. If you could go back and invent something in terms of technology or app, what would it be? What would your invention be using the time machine?
The time machine.
Another time.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, let's create the time machine.
Good answer. Shatin?
That was a better answer. No, I think it would be great to have some way where we can airdrop ideas into people's heads naturally. As a marketer, I would love nothing more. Clearly, it creates a whole bunch of issues around governance of who can drop what into whose head. But at the same time, I do believe that it'll be exciting to be able to airdrop ideas and not spend so much time trying to just get the information across.
I have a feeling Jake is going to have a good time with that one. He's furiously taking the notes. Exactly. Nikhil?
Yeah, I was hoping that maybe I could create an app that is built upon translations where you can read people's minds. Because a lot of times I've learned, trying to explain ideas and try to sell new ideas that even if they're nodding at you, they're not really agreeing. So I wish I could read people's minds, and then that app could translate, to proverbially say, you need to speak their language to be able to sell that idea. It could just do that. There's an app for it. You just put your idea in, and it translates to who it's actually communicating to. So that would be my gizmo.
That would be cool, too. Jacob?
So mine's both fun and boring. So my fun one that I've always wanted to exist are hoverboards. I just want a hoverboard. I just want to go back to the future and have a hoverboard. But the very boring one, which ties into sort of what we talked about, is I think 30, 40 years ago when I talked to I'm talking about everybody in this room, we're building websites and creating databases and putting data into these storage areas, these repositories. I think something we made a mistake is we forgot to give it a fingerprint or a hash or some sort of global unique identifier. So now that we're trying to exchange this data between each other, we don't know what is the primary, we don't know which is the source of truth. So the boring thing is our master data management kind of sucks because we didn't get it right 40 years ago. And so I would go back and fix that little tweak and make all of our lives today easier. And a hoverboard.